The former mayor at the center of this Louisiana case has now been convicted, and instead of apologizing, she says she did nothing wrong and plans to appeal. That's the story making headlines. A small-town leader, a highly controversial trial, and a verdict that she and her legal team openly challenge. But what actually happened inside that courtroom, and why does she remain defiant even after the jury's decision? According to publicly available reports, the case involves serious allegations connected to inappropriate conduct with a minor. The jury reached a guilty verdict. Yet, through her attorney, she maintains her innocence and insists the outcome does not reflect what she believes to be the truth. So how did it get to this point? And what happens next? A jury in Louisiana found the former mayor guilty on felony charges related to inappropriate conduct involving a teenager. These charges stem from allegations connected to an incident that reportedly occurred during a social gathering at a private home. From the beginning, the case drew attention because of who she was, an elected official trusted by her community. According to court testimony, the allegations centered around claims that an encounter occurred while alcohol was involved at a gathering that included younger individuals. But here's where the tension deepens. Despite the conviction, her attorney publicly stated that she is very, very disappointed in the verdict and plans to appeal. He emphasized that at this stage, there would be no apology issued on her behalf. He also stated that she respects the jury process, but strongly disagrees with the outcome. So what does that actually mean moving forward? If someone convicted by a jury says they're innocent, what happens next? Is the story over or just beginning? Her legal team has made it clear that they intend to challenge the verdict through the appeals process. An appeal does not retry the entire case from scratch. Instead, it focuses on whether legal errors may have occurred during the trial that could have affected the outcome. That means the next phase won't revolve around emotional testimony. It will center on legal technicalities, courtroom procedures, and whether the trial was conducted fairly under the law. Her attorney also indicated they will argue against incarceration during sentencing. He described her as an effective mayor and a dedicated mother, positioning those factors as part of the case for leniency. And that brings up another question. How much does someone's public service record matter once a conviction is entered? Before this case, she was known locally as a public official serving her town. Supporters have pointed to her record in office, claiming she contributed positively to the community. But the jury's decision shifts the narrative dramatically. In cases involving public figures, there are always two conversations happening at once: the legal process and the public perception. The courtroom decides guilt under the law. The public often debates character, judgment, and accountability. According to reporting, testimony during the trial included statements from witnesses describing what they allegedly observed. The prosecution argued those accounts supported the charges. The defense challenged that interpretation and maintained that the evidence did not meet the standard required for conviction. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution, but sentencing has not yet taken place, and that means the most consequential decision may still be ahead. She faces a potential prison sentence that could extend into double-digit years, depending on how the judge rules at sentencing. However, sentencing guidelines involve multiple factors, including the nature of the conviction, prior record, and arguments presented by both sides. Her legal team says they will do everything within the law to argue against incarceration. At the same time, prosecutors are expected to advocate for a sentence they believe reflects the seriousness of the conviction. This creates a legal crossroads. Will the court impose significant prison time, or will the defense successfully argue for an alternative outcome? And beyond the courtroom, there's a broader issue. What does this case say about accountability in public office? Cases involving elected officials tend to spark deeper public reflection. Communities expect leaders to uphold standards not just legally, but ethically. When allegations surface, and especially when convictions follow, trust becomes part of the discussion. At the same time, the legal system provides mechanisms for appeal precisely because verdicts can be contested. The process does not end at conviction, it moves into another phase of review. That tension, between finality and fairness, is what makes this story ongoing rather than finished. And that leads to the next chapter. This case is no longer about accusations. It's about consequences, appeals, and what accountability looks like after a jury has spoken. Whether the appeal changes, anything remains uncertain. What is certain is that the sentencing hearing will shape the immediate future, not just legally but personally and politically. If you want to understand how appeals work, what judges consider during sentencing, and how cases like this typically unfold after conviction, the next part breaks down that entire process step by step. Because sometimes the verdict is only the beginning. An appeal is often misunderstood. It's not about replaying testimony or asking a new jury to reconsider emotions. It's about reviewing the legal structure of the trial itself. Her legal team will likely examine whether any procedural errors occurred. For example, whether certain evidence should have been admitted, whether jury instructions were properly delivered, or whether courtroom standards were fully upheld. But here's the key point. Appeals courts do not overturn verdicts lightly. So what would actually need to happen for the verdict to change? For a conviction to be overturned, the defense must show that a significant legal mistake occurred, one that potentially influenced the jury's decision. If the appellate court finds no substantial error, the conviction stands. If it does find a meaningful issue, possible outcomes can include a new trial, a modification of the sentence, or in rare cases, a dismissal. However, these outcomes depend entirely on the specifics of the legal arguments presented. According to publicly available information, her legal team appears committed to pursuing every available legal avenue. That signals a long road ahead, not a quick resolution. And while the appeal develops, sentencing remains the immediate focus, and sentencing may say just as much about the case as the verdict itself. When sentencing takes place, the judge weighs multiple factors: the severity of the conviction, the defendant's prior record, statements from both prosecution and defense, the impact on the individuals involved, community standards and state guidelines. Her attorney has already indicated they will argue that incarceration is not necessary. They are expected to highlight her background in public service and her role as a parent. Prosecutors, on the other hand, will likely focus on the seriousness of the charges and the jury's findings. The judge must balance all of this carefully, and that balance is rarely simple. But beyond the legal mechanics, what does this mean for public trust? When someone holds elected office, their actions, both public and private, often face higher scrutiny. That's not a legal rule, but a societal expectation. Communities place trust in officials to represent them responsibly. When allegations surface, that trust can be shaken, regardless of political affiliation or local loyalties. Some supporters argue that one chapter does not erase years of service. Others believe leadership carries heightened responsibility. And that's where this story extends beyond one individual. It becomes about standards, because when accountability enters the picture, it reshapes reputations permanently. Even if an appeal is filed, even if legal strategies continue, the conviction itself marks a turning point. Public perception does not always wait for appellate rulings. In many cases involving public figures, the court of public opinion operates on a faster timeline than the legal system, but it's important to separate the two. The legal system determines criminal responsibility under the law. The public decides how they interpret character and trust. Those two outcomes don't always align. And that tension often defines stories like this. This case is still moving forward. There will be a sentencing decision, there will likely be an appeal, and there will be continued discussion about accountability, leadership, and the boundaries of public trust. But here's the broader takeaway. The legal system is structured in phases: investigation, trial, verdict, sentencing, appeal. Each phase serves a purpose. Each one reflects checks and balances designed to ensure fairness. No single headline captures that full process.